These days, pretty much any Star Wars fan with even a passing awareness of legends knows the story of the Yuuzhan Vong, a race of powerful beings from another galaxy that, around 25 ABY, launched a brutal invasion of the Star Wars galaxy that resulted in the death of approximately 300 trillion people. What many fans may not know, however, is that the Vong weren't the first extra-galactic beings to invade the galaxy. Before the Vong, there were others, and in today's video, we'll be talking about one of them, a people known as the Nagai, that took retaliation seriously.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Our story takes us to a dwarf satellite galaxy that orbited the galactic disk somewhere off the unknown regions. This satellite galaxy, companion Besh, was more commonly known as Firefist, and it's on this edge of the galaxy that the Nagai's home planet, Nagai, was located. Nagai was a mountainous and dry world a little smaller in size than Earth. Its surface had extreme variations in elevation, from jagged mountain peaks to deep valleys in between. Due to its thin atmosphere, the mountains, which received most of the sunlight from Nagai's star, were bombarded by solar radiation, leaving the planet's sentient species to build their civilization in the shadowy valleys where they would be protected. As if the radiation weren't enough, the sun-baked regions of Nagai were also prone to violent storms that could cause vegetation to sprout within hours of the downpour. Given the harsh environment they involved in, it makes sense that the Nagai were unusual in appearance. Nagai were near humans, around the same height as the average human, but significantly narrower in build, with angular features and slim frames. Their skin was a pale grey, with angled eyes the same colour and jet black hair. Thanks to their slim, yet slender build, they appeared frail to others, an illusion they allowed to continue until they needed to demonstrate their actual strength. Despite their perceived fragility, they were incredibly dexterous, able to react with great speed and agility both in and outside combat. They built their wardrobe with this dexterity in mind, prioritizing clothing that allowed for max movement. Nagai also had the ability to tailor their voices to the occasion. They had a very wide vocal range and excellent control over their voices, which made them powerful orators. They could sound soothing and mesmerizing, seductive or empowering, depending on the need at hand. They were also incredibly expressive, with unique clothes and hairstyles that fit the individual. Nagai's society was built around various honor systems that prioritized the protection of one's honor. For example, although Nagai warriors were highly skilled and fearless, they operated under certain personal restrictions in a way that's quite reminiscent of the samurai code of old. They had no moral qualms about killing their opponent if it benefited them or served to preserve their honor, but they weren't bloodthirsty. If their opponent was weak or had surrendered, killing them would bring dishonor, and thus, it wasn't done. They also feared nothing but the loss of freedom and dishonor. Honor was so important to them that, if they were ever to be dishonored, they had to reclaim their honor by committing ritualistic suicide. And if that Nagai failed or refused to take their own life, it was the duty of those around them to finish the job and restore that honor. This fascination extended into the Nagai's personal lives. Their honor code dictated that, to be honorable, they had to devote themselves to the one they loved above everyone else, even if their love interest didn't feel the same way. That said, this sort of demand didn't extend toward everyone in their community. Nagai were incredibly individualistic, and beyond their loves and family members, they didn't particularly care about their community members, only extending a helping hand if it benefited them in some way, or if they were honor-bound to do so. Another aspect of Nagai culture that was held in high esteem was martial prowess, especially when it came to melee combat, particularly blades. Nagai were expected to learn the blade from a young age so that, when they reached maturity, they would be skilled with all types of sword, from traditional Nagai tekla blades, swift-cut foils, and longswords. Each day, Nagai trained with these weapons, honing their skills. It was simultaneously a form of meditation and of exercise, but at its core, martial prowess was key to a Nagai maintaining their honor and ascending in societal ranks. You see, honor duels were a key part of Nagai culture. They could be used to challenge an opponent or rise in the ranks. A Nagai's ability as a duelist, which they had to display by winning duels, was the only way to increase one's social status. That said, Nagai duels weren't particularly gentlemanly. After generations of enslavement, the Nagai had developed a very edgy sense of humor, which they liked to wield against their opponent as much as they wielded their blade. Combined with their natural charisma, it was often enough to disarm their opponent metaphorically, leaving them the opportunity to do so physically. Before the Toph invasion of their homeworld, Nagai society was organized into a caste system called circles. Each circle was then divided into subcircles. The circle a Nagai was born into was determined at birth, but they could then work their way up through the subcircles by accumulating social status and winning duels. It's unclear how cruel this particular caste system was, or if the circles were parallel to one another or hierarchical. After the invasion, however, the caste system was done away with by necessity. Rather than competing with one another, the circles joined to better ensure their survival. During the invasion, entire sub-circles were wiped out, promoting those below them by default. This completely upended the strict rigidity of the sub-circles, with those below now mingling and mating with the higher-ups. This called into question the purity of each caste, with many more progressive Nagai calling for the entire system to be disbanded. For a long time, the Nagai had kept to themselves, building their beautiful cities of crystal and wire in the mountain gorges and focusing on their complex social structures. All of that changed when the Tophs attacked. This invasion came on the coattails of the Nagai developing FTL transportation. When Nagai scout ships left Nagi for the first time, they were followed home, and soon after, the Tophs, a green-skinned species of space pirates native to the same galaxy, launched a full-scale invasion of the planet. The war was bloody. For centuries, the Nagai fought back, using guerrilla tactics to contend with their conquerors. In desperation, they reached out to two planetary neighbors, the Macabre and the Farun, exchanging technology so, united, they could fight off the Tophs. Even with their combined strength, however, thousands perished. Over time, the once fearless Nagai began to fear and hate their oppressors. Desperation mounted, and when that happens, bad plans are created. This is where the Nagai decided that, in order to defeat the Tophs once and for all, they had to look outward for new resources. And so, they decided to invade the galaxy, which they referred to as Sky River, and plunder it for resources they would then use to liberate Nagi. This brings us to just after the Battle of Endor, when both the Galactic Empire and the New Republic were utterly exhausted from fighting. When the Nagai struck around 4 ABY, it was swift and unexpected, and at first, the New Republic struggled. Supplemented by the Farun's technology, the Nagai's ships and weapons were uncommon and dangerous. Despite looking very unusual by galactic standards, their warships were far more battle-capable and agile than most New Republic ships still in commission. Their weapons were also devastating. Primarily, they relied on sonic blasters that were powerful enough to rip flesh apart molecule by molecule, and despite it going against many Nagai officers' sense of honor, they didn't hesitate to use them when needed. They also had the protection of their traditional electromesh armor and cloaking technology, both of which they improved prior to the invasion. The first thing the Nagai tried to do was try to re-establish the Wookiee slave trade on Kashyyyk, presumably because Wookiees made for incredible slaves, and they believed selling and using them would garner high profits. The first name the galaxy actually had for the Nagai came from the Wookiees. A Nagai representative introduced himself on Kashyyyk, and the Wookiees mispronounced their species' name as Knives. At this point, the Alliance of Free Planets had to intervene, and thanks to the efforts of Han Solo, Lando Calrissian, and Chewbacca, their efforts on Kashyyyk were foiled. In response, the Nagai regrouped and allied themselves with the Imperial Remnant to destroy the Alliance. What followed was skirmishes above Cabray, Mandalore, and Kinoween before they struck at Endor. In the beginning, the Nagai were winning. Thanks to a mole they'd had on the inside, they'd been able to get intel on all Alliance dogfighting maneuvers, and so were able to outfly them. However, once the Alliance figured out why they were being outperformed, they were able to turn the tables and send the Nagai packing. But the Nagai weren't done. After their defeat at Endor, they launched strike teams at other planets, such as Iskalon. On the planet Trenwith, they discovered a Toph base, which they attacked immediately with extreme prejudice. Despite their fervor, the Toffs won that battle, and they went back on to attack Zeltros. And this is where history takes an unlikely shift. Even though they'd been working with the Imperial Remnant to take out the Alliance, the Nagai's fear and hatred of the Toffs was so great that, when faced with their invasion of the galaxy, the Nagai chose instead to ally with the New Republic and fight the Toffs together. Their combined forces were enough to defeat the Toffs above the Pleasure Planet, and the two sides were able to sign a treaty. Together, they were able to ambush the Toffs on the planet Saijo and capture their prince, forcing them to surrender, thus ending all threats of extra-galactic invasion. After they'd successfully routed the Toffs from the galaxy, the Alliance rewarded their Nagai allies with sovereignty over Saijo. Some Nagai chose to remain and settle on the planet, while others returned to Firefist, where, with the help of the Mandalorians, they were able to liberate Nagai from Toff occupation. Those that remained on Saijo joined the Alliance's members and hopefully had better days to look forward to. So that's everything about the Nagai, one of the two OG extra-galactic invaders. In a future video, we'll be talking about their oppressors, the Toffs, so stay tuned for that. If there's anything else you'd like us to cover, both in canon and legends, let us know your suggestions in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.